Hi, I'm Bethany. I'm a third year law undergraduate and I'll be partaking in this year's InternPlus Programme. I'm here to give you some advice about how I found the application process, how it caters for disability and any tips I may have for you. As a third year, it's really important, especially in law, that we find work experience ahead of traineeships that we apply to in our final year. So I was already on the hunt for this kind of thing anyway. I'd say the career emails played a fundamental part in me finding out about the post because I wasn't aware that the university did internships like this, never mind a legal one. So it wasn't until I got one of these emails and curiosity kind of got the better of me, and I went through the posts and this one really related to me and it seemed interesting and I just couldn't help but apply. So my internship in particular looks at title deeds and helping the university determine what property it actually owns ahead of land registration. And although this doesn't necessarily relate to you, there's a vast majority of posts, so there's anything from looking at helping with the university's carbon footprint, to looking at student experience, to even cybersecurity in that field. So as you can tell, there's bound to be a post that somewhat will give you transferable skills, and mine in particular is pretty much allowing me to mimic the work a solicitor does on a daily basis. So these internships I think are key and unique in the way that they're allowing undergraduates to do work that you wouldn't usually be trusted with until you'd graduated. So I think it's definitely worth applying for one. So the application process itself is fairly simple in the way that it's just an application that you submit to the university, and then if you're successful you get invited along to an interview. And I just say treat the application process the same way that you would applying for a job. So essentially it's kind of just the basic questions and you submit your CV, and then after a few weeks I got invited along to an interview. So these internships are paid, flexible and allow students to get really valuable work experience, and with this they're very competitive. So I wanted to make sure I was as prepared as possible. I'd say my key advantage in preparing for the interview was definitely utilising the career service. So members of the career service are specialised in different degrees and advising people in those degrees, and I'd worked with a lady called Janice before in helping me promote and better my CV. So I went straight back to her and I was like, Janice, I've got an interview for this internship and I need help. She was lovely. She did some research into the internship for me and she booked an hour out to sit with me and almost do a mock interview. And she sat and she asked me questions and we did it as if I was having an actual interview. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the questions were hard and I struggled, but it really helped to be able to sit there with another person that I didn't necessarily know on like a friend basis who was going to give me unbiased advice, and she sat and she gave me feedback about how I presented myself, how I answered the questions, and she just gave me advice, and I think that was key because it meant I could go into my actual interview feeling refreshed, kind of knowing what to expect and also how to put myself across. And I had a lot more confidence because I'd done it before. I'd done it like a few days prior, so it's definitely worthwhile utilising the career service. I know applying for things like this can be a worry for students that have a disability or suffer a long-term mental health issue, but I just like to put it out there that I've suffered with a mental health issue for a while. And I too was worried about this because I feel like sometimes people think it's a disadvantage and it can stop you from achieving things that perhaps people that don't have these things would find easy. But the university actually has a guaranteed interview scheme policy in place. So if you do suffer from a disability or a long-term mental health issue and you meet the criteria in place, you can disclose this on your application form. You're obviously not forced to, but if you choose to, you will be guaranteed an interview, and it means you can put your voice out there and be represented when maybe your application might not be as strong for that reason. And it also means the university are making a valiant effort to try and increase equality and diversity in this way, and I think that should really encourage you to apply. You're not going to be ignored or disadvantaged, and if anything, it puts you at a forefront in the running for the post. So definitely apply. Don't let that stop you from applying. So because of the pandemic, my interview had to be online, and in some ways that's more daunting because you've got to stare at a camera and not everyone's comfortable with that. However, I think it's good to look at the positives. You get to do an interview in an environment you're comfortable and known with, so that's good. And it's so much easier to make eye contact with 3 interviewers because you're just looking at one space instead of having to talk about what you're talking about and make a conscious effort to move your gaze to meet the interviewer, so that's also an advantage. As for what I wore, I dressed semi-formal, so I wore a black turtleneck, a blazer and trousers, the way I normally would for a job interview. Neutral makeup, a sleek hairstyle, the basics. In my interview I was greeted by 3 interviewers. I don't know if it's 3 for all of them, but I just go into it expecting 3. Again, seems daunting, however they were lovely and they took me through it very steadily. I believe they all have roles in my internship in particular, so these are the people you'll be working with on a regular basis anyway, so it's good to meet them at the forefront. Remember, they don't expect you to be a professional, a lawyer or anything. They know you're a student and they've seen your application, and obviously they liked what they saw. So my advice is to just be yourself and answer as honestly as you can. If some questions throw you, it's okay to take a minute and just think about what you want to say. And also take the opportunity to ask any pressing questions to them, because this is your key chance and it also shows that you properly considered the role. I'd say my interview lasted about 20 minutes and there weren't any questions in there that were, out of the blue. They're stereotypical, and the careers advisor helped me again prepare for those. And then after that I just carried on with my day, and it took maybe a day or 2 to get the result. And I have a few final tips for you. So my first one, and probably one of the most important ones, is to ignore the imposter syndrome. You're capable of this, it's not too good for you. If you're meant to do the internship, I believe you will. Second, remember to be yourself throughout the entire internship. If you get the internship by pretending to be someone you're not, it's likely that the role isn't for you and you won't actually enjoy it. The interview and the process is designed to find people suited to the role. So again, if you're meant to be in the role, you will. Don't be afraid to apply for one or more than one. It's really about whichever one suits you and whichever one you have an interest in. I don't think there's any limit on which ones you can apply for. Do it because you want to. Don't do it because you're getting paid or because you feel like you need work experience and you're doing it just because of that. They're going to pick people passionate about the role, and the interviews and the application process is again designed to find people passionate and concerned about the role. So you're really wasting your time if it's just for the money or anything else. And finally, prepare. As I said before, it's competitive. They're a great advantage to your enhanced transcript. And again, the career service is there for a reason. Utilise them and you'll be great. I hope this really helped. If you've got any questions, I'd ask again the career service because they help run the programme. Thanks.